Escaping the Fold by Vincent Merkel. The Beginning. Sit, child, and listen to my story. First, you must accept that I can call you child, not because of your age, but because of what I have seen and lived through. You and others often ask, where have you been? What has become of you? Now an old man, unable to hide the years of torture and discomfort from the ravages of an ancient beast that made heroes of men, I will finally tell you what has come to pass. It has been well documented as I have carefully written the events, and I habitually survey the words I have written with some element of disbelief. The story sounds familiar for a reason. You have heard it in tales about the gods from the times before the wicked blue screen. It doesn't seem real that I should be sitting here. The air conditioning is running. There is food in the refrigerator, and I have a comfortable bed with a clean pillow. There are no bugs to eat my face here, but they swarm. The bugs still leave their messages. I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I should explain a few things. But first, you must turn off your other devices. They find you that way, the bugs, through a certain kind of light. It is the light from the eye of the beast. Good. Turn them off and listen to a tale that will convince you of a certainty about things. You all knew before I went missing that I am a carpenter and an artist with a passion and a flair for the wildlife. I was traveling in a faraway land, selling my services to make a living. My professional skills, coupled with a taste for the fast life, resulted in agreements that led me further from the boundaries of my comfort and in need of a compass. I found that compass pointing to profit, a Greek captain, an old criminal with the audacity and nerve of an elephant in heat, and a small crew who felt that they could benefit from some of my more imaginative applications of carpentry skills and my ability to handle a weapon. They were interested in appearances, and their vessel did not appear to show any indications of illicit business endeavors due to my craft, so I quickly became a de facto member of their crew. Why I was voyaging on the ship is not important. It is that I was on a boat with 4 others en route to making an important delivery. A new 55-foot sailboat loaded with steel and substance, meant for a tycoon in a land I mean not to disclose, was mercilessly swept by some strange god of the ocean far from its path and rendered a heap of sticks and fiberglass in the torrent of a wicked storm. Before the hull first smashed upon some iron wave and shattered, my mind went back to the previous 5 minutes when my eyes looked upon our proud and furious Captain Christos, telling us, his worried crew, not to fret because he was far more evil than any storm, and there was no god of sea, land, or air that could decide our fate without his approval. Damned be I to hell for daring to keep him from his fortune. That is when the ship snapped in two with the flash of blue lightning from the sky. You see, the captain had veered further from the coast to escape the grips of a dark storm as the sun disappeared into the western horizon. We had been engaged in division as a crew. The captain spoke of a change of plans from illicit substance He wanted to enter the flesh trade. A sweet deal he had found of some poor girl stolen by a radical group of African natives that we were to pick up. 3 young girls were to be hidden on the boat and delivered as slaves, but a detour from our original route was necessary for the captain's plan to be put into action. The crew was divided, and we fought over the helm. Christos, the captain, and his first mate Nikos had the guns and owned the business. They saw the benefit of the cash and profit of the scheme. I wanted no part of kidnapping on my conscience and was ready to mutiny at the first opportunity. George was an old engineer who I had confidence in, and who did not mind delivering goods, but could not totally betray the ideals of 20th century humanity. He knew the stars by heart and was a skilled navigator. Vangelis, a chef who could make shoe leather taste like bacon, was a skilled chemist who frequently tested products for the captain before accepting them for distribution. He was too timid to openly turn on Christos. Vangelis said that he believed we would be punished by God for the captain's foul plan. The vessel was being tossed about, and the lower cabin was taking on water. The last thing I remember was Christos damning Vangelis, George, and me to hell, and then the strike over the lightning bolt. The hull smacked down. Something struck my head, and I remember swallowing the salt water and choking. I remember thinking as the sheets of rain and waves and winds slammed my body and face about that I was going to die. I remember vomiting up the last of the salt water mixed with whatever was left in my stomach and lungs onto a foggy, sandy beach. The lightning that hit the boat had struck so close to me that I still felt fairly blinded, and an unknown spell was on my mind and body. I was hypnotized by a light. It was an electrical diffusion emanating from some strange formation in the shallows. It came from a frightening creature. My eyes were clouded over. An eerie song like the buzzing of bees played in my conscience's lines. No, messages began to form on the screens of my mind's eye.
The Dismal Beach.
I don't know how long I lay on that beach. My body was wrecked from heaving, and I was lacerated and bruised from being washed against some jagged reef. I slowly woke and barely opened my eyes. It must have been midday. The sky was obscured by low clouds, and the ground beneath my belly was hidden by a dense fog. I dragged myself to a higher part of the sandy dunes, where a few planks from the decking of the ship lay. Along the beach, in the dunes fairly close at hand, some water jugs peeked out from the wreckage that followed me to the shore. I could not raise my voice to call for help. I struggled to liberate a water container from under a pile of debris, and finally succeeded in quenching my thirst. I fashioned a small crude shelter from the sparse ruins of the ship and fainted in it. As my strength slowly returned to me, the confusion in my mind receded, but the fog on the land stayed. And over a period of 3 days I fashioned a small platform with planks of wood from the wreckage, and over the platform I made a lean-to, sturdy and somewhat watertight. I secured a few slats as a door for fear of the predatory voices I heard at night. Shrill screams of monkeys, the yipping of unknown wild dogs, and an occasional shriek from some frantic victim caught in the jaws of a hunter of those shores broke the silence and tried my nerves. By the 7th day on the shore, my 10-gallon water bottle was almost empty. With a day of ration left, I walked the beach in search of help. My hunger and sense of despair was great. I could see no signs of humanity. I had survived the wreck of the Tilly with my boots and dungarees intact. I left the boots in my makeshift camp to dry, as my feet hadn't the strength to handle the extra weight. I found the plastic remains of numerous water containers that had been smashed or broken open from the exertion of their journey. The sandy beach gave way to rocks after a few hours of trudging the misty coast. A slight drizzle of rain fell steadily upon my head and shoulders. I could not see beyond the rocky peaks and jags that would destroy my tender feet. With a hoarse and shallow cry, my voice sought to reach the ears of any that might hear me, but there was no answer to my pleas for help. Hunger dug its sharp talons into my belly, and I doubled over in pain. I fell to my knees and pleaded to the rocks, the sea, and the sky, "God, help me! God, save me! God, forgive me!" Woe was me, a grown man crying on a beach, my bloody limbs tied together with shreds of shirt, battered and bruised beyond recognition. I moved closer to the shore to catch a glimpse of myself in a ripple of water caught in a natural pool carved out by centuries of storms in an outcropping of lava rock. Who was the poor son of fate that looked back at me? I pitied that man for a moment when the top of the water broke with a splash. God heard my prayer, and the proof was a fish. A 2 or 3 pound silvery denizen of the deep was trapped in the pool. My strained voice laughed as if responding to the most enlightened joke ever to be told by man, as my hands reached in and scraped knuckles on sharp stone in pursuit of the evasive fish. He splashed about, and I laughed like a child, and once he was in my grips, I held so tightly that my fingers pierced him. There was no liberation from his fate. I rubbed his scales off on the stone, and am little shy to tell you, ate him uncooked while he flapped in futile attempts for escape. I was mad with hunger. I might have forgotten to give thanks to the God who saw fit to bring that meal to me. I would do that as my strength was renewed. Now, all of this sounds very interesting, and the makings for a good story. Indeed, it has been told before. But this is where my story truly begins. As I made my way back to the makeshift hut on the dunes, I stumbled upon a sealed box from the Tilly that had washed ashore. The night was falling, and I pushed the crate out of the range of the tide. I heard a voice behind me coming from the water.
The voice called to me gently, like the lapping waves. "Oh, Christos, you have been busy indeed. Let me look upon the captain, the face of the man whose soul is mine."
It was strange, like a whisper. I could hear the wake of some creature swimming close to the shore. There was a chill in the air, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up as if electrified. Energy tingled over my skin. I stood still with my back to the ocean and listened carefully. I answered the voice from the water. "I am not the man you seek." I stood afraid, not of man, but a voice that belonged to no man. I looked at my hands on the crate and noted a slight blue light outlining my skin. I turned my head and carefully looked over my shoulder and saw the tail of a snake in the salty water, stretching far back into the darkness. The voice spoke again.
"Come now, Christos. Turn your eyes to me, for I am your God. Let me look upon my loyal servant."
The voice was searching and condescending. I didn't think it could be real, so I turned to face the creature from which the voice originated. A soft blue glow surged from its head. I began to tell the thing that I am not who it seeks, but my words trailed off into silence as I looked upon it. It had the tail of a serpent and the torso of a man. It appeared as if it had snakes for arms, and many of them. It was dark, so details were not clear, and in the surge of blue light I could feel my eyes roll back in my head. A stream of something like ants marched across my eyes. It was like a vision. The creature was trying to program a message into my mind. It told me that I was one of them. Yes, I would do well to serve its purpose. My identity was false, and I was not who I claimed to be. Not a hungry carpenter lost on some faraway island who just wanted to make a life for myself. No, I was a master of nightmares, the captain of a ship that delivered despair. It thought I was Christos. I fought the hold that the little streams of insects had over my conscience. My resolve was in the strength of the truth. I was not the one the beast sought. I moved my hands to cover my eyes and jerked my body spasmodically and yelled out an anguished scream, "Jesus, save me!" At my sudden and unexpected plea, the dark and watery voice mimicked a laugh.
"Look at the hateful one. Look at the hypocrite that cries for God today."
The creature's words were punctuated by a large splash of water where it waded, and throwing myself to the sand, I hid my face
and crawled to my lean-to on the dunes. Shivering and hungry, that night I heard the watery rants of a beast that I thought was no more than a hallucination. The morning brought daylight, still diffused and dreamlike from the stubborn haze that refused to lift its dreariness from the beach. I pried open the box that I had found on the beach the night before. It was not large, much like a footlocker, with a wooden top and no hinges. Metal straps served their purpose in keeping the box intact, but I prevailed against them with a rock and some planks. On top was sealed reams of printed paper. I found documents, bills of lading, and receipts for cargo. Amongst the items in the crate were also office supplies, cellulose tape, a stapler, and a golden ballpoint pen with a number of sealed packs of ink cartridges. Under those objects were more reams of documents. A bottle of 100-year-old Scotch whiskey was neatly nestled on the side of the papers. I put the items back in the crate to keep them from getting wet from the steady drops of rain-water. I lifted my head to the clouds to quench my thirst. I stuck out my tongue. It was fresh water. At least it was fresher than what the ocean had to offer. A broken plastic water jug I had found earlier made an efficient funnel that directed rain into my intact yet almost empty supply. I turned to survey the beach again. My eyes tried to pierce through the dismal atmosphere. Walking into the unknown was better than sitting in one spot and hoping for a ray of sunshine and a nice hot lunch. However, going on an excursion in my weakened state seemed silly. Looking down at feet wrinkled and saturated from the constant moisture made me aware of my weakness. I asked no one in particular, "Will waiting for dry boots give me better odds at surviving this mess?" After gathering some planks, I broke their edges so that they were sharp, and pushed them into the sand around my hut, angled outward in such a way that any intruder at night might find a grievous splinter in his belly. Gathering wood and a handful of paper from the crate was the next step. In my pocket was a lighter, for one with many vices naturally needs fire at hand. I built a bonfire that was soon crackling. The flames dried the drops of rain as they fell, and the precipitation began to taper off. Using a sharp shard of granite and a few other stones cleverly placed, I split another plank of hard wood with a kick to fashion a crude spear about 5 feet in length. I charred that piece of teak on the fire, just enough to scrape the carbonized ends on a sharp, heavy stone and relieve the wood of any splinters and rough edges. I burned the end of the plank into the gradual fashion of a spear. This would do well for fishing and make a better weapon than my small pocket knife, a treasured childhood gift from my father. My makeshift plastic funnel diverted a few pints of water from the lean-to's roof into the intact container. I tried the captured rain with a timid kiss of my lips to the bottle, then drank a hearty swallow. I had used a good percentage of the water that I originally found to wash out my wounds, and had lamented the waste of my scarce resource. But as the rainwater would now suffice, and I had no indication of infections, I was content to set out to the rock where I had left the remains of my last dinner. On the way, I noticed that only a few stray planks had washed ashore since the day before. I threw them inland to gather later. I found a rocky pool, and near it the leftovers of the last meal I had eaten. The sediment in the water under the basin had begun to clear enough to see shadows of movement. I tested the water's depth with my teak spear, and found that it was about 2.5 feet, with the rocks above creating a shelf that might be a good place for fish to hide. I tore the fish remains and tossed them into the shallows and waited. It was not long before small fish made a banquet of the tidbits. I baited that spot for over a half-hour. Moving slowly, I raised my spear. I cast it forcefully into the shady water, never having fully let go, and pinned some poor creature to the bottom. I quickly lifted the spear out of the water with a forward motion, so as not to drop my lunch back in, only to have it escape and become the delicacy of a bigger fish that swims too deep for me to dare to venture. I carried my fish back to the camp and fashioned a woven grill from saplings and green branches from inland, then cooked and ate my only meal of that day. The clouds and fog began to lift off of the shore and sea once darkness had settled, and a view of the night's guardians, the stars and moon, were the only discernible details about where I was on this earth. How I wished George was with me, to read the stars and tell me that we would soon be found by some friendly naval force. I missed Vangelis and his drunken laughter and rich and fatty meals. There was a storm coming. I could see clouds being lit up by lightning some 20 miles out to sea. They formed a wall that stretched high above the horizon and relieved the stars of their duty. I sat and watched the light show for at least 2 hours. Looking at my shanty house higher up in the dunes, I wondered if I would remain dry that night once the rains returned. I opened the bottle of Scotch and took a long draught. The drink was smooth and strong. My already undernourished and dehydrated body reacted to the spirit quickly. My head buzzed. I took another stiff swallow of the mellow, smoky drink that hit my belly like fire. I would have to come up with a plan to find help. The Beast and the Cove. I felt good. I was miserable from being bitten by sand fleas, but my wounds were healing. I diagnosed myself as having broken or badly bruised ribs, but the whiskey numbed the pain. I stood up with my spear in one hand and my bottle in the other, and yelled at the sea and oncoming clouds. I yelled like an idiot, not knowing that something was out there that could hear me. Until that point, I thought I had been having delusions from stress and imagined the weird creature that spoke to me the night before. So I yelled at my delusion beyond the safety of the shore and laughed. I hollered out again at God or any creature willing to hear my voice. I let it be known my disdain for the all-knowing and powerful forces that stranded me on that rock for the sake of the gods' amusements. After cursing the skies and the clouds, being a bit tipsy, I took another shot from the bottle. I was beginning to feel hungry. Again, I could see in no direction clearly. The winds began to blow quite hard, and my vision was blurred from intoxication. I had been staring at the sea. I saw some movement out there. The waves had subtly grown in size, and the tide chased me at least 10 meters up the beach. The clouds sneaked up on me and were over my head. A sudden crashing noise came from the water, and a huge splash sprayed 20 feet in the air. And I strained my eyes into the darkness when 2 bright, cold blue flashes of light caught my attention. They became very intense, and I found myself talking to the owner of those wicked specks of blue fire. I was captivated by their apparent depth. The ants began to stitch a message across my eyes again. They marched effortlessly across the screen that my mind beheld. The little black and red orthogonal lines formed some kind of knowledge. The ants have their marching orders, and without thought, regret, or shame, they wrote out their lines into the unholy word of the dragon that caught me on his beach. Again, the warbled voice came out of the water as snakes dance like whips from the torso of the great and frightful creature. It spoke. So, you are not Christos, but not Christos. You called to me, and I answered your call. I am your God, not Christos, and I have come to serve you and ask for what is mine. As it spoke, the lines across my eyes multiplied. They were reaching into my mind. The beast was trying to learn from me. As my mind raced, I found that there was a correlation to my thoughts and the patterns that the creature was streaming into me. I used my fingers and vaguely brushed away the phantom ants, diverting the inward flow to change the meaning of their messages. I wrote my own messages as the creature's voice filled my ears. You have something that is mine, And who are you to deny your God? I alone saved you and your crew, not crystals.
It was as if in a dream that I was writing my life on its scaly skin. I fought to keep myself from mentally projecting all of my thoughts and fears onto the belly of the beast, and then I found my voice and answered the serpent. You are not God. I owe you nothing. I shouted at the undulating arms under the fearsome head of an eel. We conversed for some time. It wanted my conscience for its own, and I would not give it to him. He tried to coerce me with fear and coax me to the water's edge to caress my cheek and then console me. It showed me a beautiful rainbow of colors and promised me a seat to the left of him in his kingdom. I replied no, and I told him that God was not this way or that way, and he would get nothing from me. He asked me what I wanted most. He would grant it. And I don't know why I told him, but I did. I wanted food.
Is that all?
It condescended.
I will bring you a feast, not crystals, and then you will know me as God.
It then disappeared into the depths with a splash, and my aching and drunk mind was my own. I found myself in a brutal storm with hard driving rain. I secured the door to my shack and listened to the faint sounds of laughter and cursing from the beast under the winds and downpour.